Namaskar. Good morning. We are back today again with MMPC 001. As I had already told you last time, it is Namaskar. Good morning. Uh, Today we're going to continue with our session and discussions on MMPC 001, Management Functions and Organizational Processes. As you would all recall, I had discussed with you the course structure in the first class also, and today being the second session, we are going to continue with the block one. In block one, that is Introduction to Management, we had in the previous week discussed management and overview, management and its evolution. Today, we're going to continue from there, from where we had left. That is, we're going to start with the rules of managers in block one, and then we'll move on to block two, which happens to be about managerial processes. Now, managerial processes in this particular course is in two blocks. So we'll take up the part one today, and in the part one, we're going to discuss planning and organizing. So, as I said, we're going to discuss block one, Introduction to Management, and in this, we're going to discuss the unit three, roles of managers, and then we'll move on to block two, managerial processes, part one, in which we will discuss the unit four of this course, that is planning, and unit five of this course, that is organizing. Now, let's begin with the roles of managers. Now, what are the objectives of this particular unit? After completing this unit, you will be able to understand the management process, the different roles of a manager, the management skills. Now, there are also levels of management. Now, what are the characteristics of a manager? Who is a good manager? How we can become a good manager? The changing role of a manager in the current context, and the changing role of a manager in the managerial perspective. Now, as I said, management process, as we had already discussed last time in the previous session, the management process basically is related to planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. Now, when we try to elaborate this, what is it? It is a process which is continuous. As you know, management process, it is a continuous process. As long as the organization exists, the process of management will continue. It is an ongoing, since it's continuous, which means it's also an ongoing process. It is a systematic way of doing things. It also, as I discussed last time, we have to manage so many resources. So those resources, they cannot work in a different direction. There has to be an integration of resources, so that is a part of the management process. It is functional because there are so many functions that have to be handled together, so it's functional. Since there's a human element involved in it, so it's the social. And what is all this going towards? It is moving towards achievement of the organizational goals, that is the desired goals of the organization. Now, the levels of management, I think perhaps you might already be knowing this, because we had given a reference to this in the previous session also. However, we're going to discuss this in detail here. Now, the levels of management, there are three. We have the top level management, we have the middle level management, and then we have the lower, which is also called the tactical level of management. Now, top level management, as you would all know, are the chief executive, or for example, the president of the organization. Then we have the board of directors, or we have the managing directors, we have the vice president of different functional areas. So what do they do basically? They manage the entire organization. So their function, the function under their purview is to manage the whole organization in an integrated manner. Now, apart from that, they also have a function of, apart from managing the organization internally, they are also responsible for coordinating and interacting with the external agencies. They are at the head of the organization, so all the strategic formulation, the organizational strategy formulation, that is also their function. And the allocation, as I said, internal functioning, which means allocation of the various resources and also controlling the resources, that is also in the hands of the top level management. Next level is the middle level management. As you all know, the name shows middle level management, which means it forms the important link between the top level management and the lower or tactical level of management. They do the actual operations. Now, as I told you, the top level management, they are into formulation of the organizational strategies. Middle level management does the operational plan. They develop the operational plans, that is the organizational strategies. In order to implement those strategies, what plans need to be developed? They coordinate with the various departments. They implement, because the formulation is done at the top level. Who does the implementation? Implementation is done by the organizational middle level management. And as I told you already, they are the important link between top level and lower level management. What does the lower level management do then? Well, the lower level management is responsible for actually, implementing the operational plans which have been developed by the middle level management. They are responsible for day-to-day operations, and they are the people, they are the resources who are actually implementing all the plans so as to achieve the organizational goals. So they are the ones who are into the activities. They always try to improve the methods. They always try to implement new processes of getting the things done, because they are responsible for the efficiency and the effectiveness of the organization. So how would the efficiency and effectiveness increase? Only by trying to innovate, by trying to initiate new activities, new processes, new methods of doing the work. What are the managerial roles? Well, a very important study has been conducted on managerial roles by Henry Mintzberg, and this study was published in his book Nature of Managerial Roles in 1973. Now, as per Mintzberg, the roles of manager is categorized into three. There are 10 roles and they are categorized into three. Now let's take one by one. The first role is the interpersonal role, which is basically, as the name shows, it is it is managing the people, the interpersonal role, that is providing information to the concerned people and also managing the interpersonal relations in the department. The managerial role, that is the interpersonal role, as you know, it is being the figurehead. So figurehead does not mean heading the organization, it could also mean heading the department, heading the division. So they represent the organization, they are the leaders. So when we say leaders, as you all know, we say good leadership skills. What does that mean? That means they are responsible for motivating the team, they are responsible for representing the work group, they are responsible for representing the department, they are responsible for representing the division in the organization. And as I said, they are responsible for interpersonal relations. So a very important role they do is, that is liaisoning. Liaisoning, which means liaisoning between various people, liaisoning between various functional organization, functional departments. So liaisoning would mean what? they, they perform the important role of coordination and maintenance of flow of information. The next role, managerial role, is informational role. As the name shows, they are responsible for processing the information. So processing the information means what? They receive the information, they collect the information, and they ensure adequate dissemination of this information to the people who need this information, who are going to use this information. That means they are responsible for disseminating the information to the people who need it. So they are concerned to be the spokesperson, that is, they transmit the information to the people outside and also within the organization. Third important role of the managers is the decisional role, according to Mintzberg. Decisional role means the information comes, then using this particular information, they try to take the important decisions. So since they're taking the important decisions, that means they are performing the entrepreneurial roles. Now, entrepreneurial roles means what? As an entrepreneur, what do we mean? We mean they are trying to search for new opportunities, for new projects to be implemented and initiated in the organization. They, as the name shows, disturbance handler. That means they are also the problem solvers. The manager acts as a problem solver. That is, they try to assess the challenges, they try to see the challenges, and they try to see where are the threats for the organization, and how these threats, these challenges can be mitigated. That is, taking corrective action, right decision at the right time. They are also negotiators. So negotiation does not always mean within the organization. They are negotiating within and outside the organization. Now we go on to the management skills. Now, I think by now you must have understood, by going through the managerial roles, you would have understood that the manager has to perform number of roles, numerous roles, varied kind of roles, varied functions. So what are these skills that a management manager requires? The skills are the technical skills. Obviously, they should have the specialized. It's a specialized job, so they should have the specialized knowledge. They are required to perform specialized tasks, so they require the technical skills. Now, as you know, they are responsible for managing the resources of the organization. Resources, as we have already discussed, are of many kinds. So we have the human resources. So one of the important management skill is managing the people, man management. Then there they have the design skills. As we already saw, one of the role is innovation, initiating new kind of work, and also being a problem solver. So in design skills, problem solving. Now, problem solving does not mean a problem in a negative sense. It is basically any situation which requires making a decision. So that requires a manager to have the decision skills, design skills. And then, as I'm talking of management skills or manager skills in general, so it refers to also the skills of the top management. So they also should have the adequate skills for formulation of strategies. Then The next skill required is the conceptual skill. Since they are responsible for strategy formulation, so conceptual skills would be strategizing. They require to have goal formulation skills, and they should also have the critical decision making skills. Now, decision making skills, why I'm saying critical, it could be the day to day decision making, it could be the tactical decision making, it could be the operational decision making, it could also be decision making for formulation of a plan, it could also be decision making for formulation of strategies, that is at the organizational level, that is at the top level. So all these skills are required, and then finally they also require the analytical skills, that is logical thinking, rationality, data analytics. All these skills are required, because if they have this logical thinking skills, if they have the conceptual things skills, they have the data analytical skills, then only they will be able to analyze the situation, then only they will be able to make decisions at the right time. Now, what are the traits of a good manager? Who is a good manager? How can one be a good manager? What are the traits? They should have an understanding vision. They should be a good communicator. They should be an independent thinker. They should be responsible for assuming the responsibilities. They should not shy away from the responsibilities. Since they are a manager, they could be manager at any level. So they should be able to assume the responsibilities. As I said, they should be a good person with having all the skills. They should have the knowledge of the process. They should be able to take the right decision at the right time, and they should be a good leader, as I said, leader leading the people. So leadership skills are required to be a good manager. They are managing a team, so they should have adequate team management skill. They should be able to motivate the people who are working with them. They should be empathetic towards the employees. Having empathy means actually caring for the employees, because how we are dealing with the employees, it is just not the physical resources, and as we have discussed last time when we saw the human relations approach, it is just not the physical resources that motivates an employee towards being an effective employee, towards increasing the productivity of the organization. It is also the social skills, the social relationships existing within the department, within the organization, that is being empathetic, which helps in increasing the productivity of the organization. Now, as I said, manager be a problem solver. Problem solver. That means they should also have the of the trade, which goes into helping to resolve the conflict in the organization, and they should have an emotional balance. They should not be too emotional. They should not be carried away by the emotions, because then you cannot take the right decision. At the same time, they should not be emotionally dry person, because you have to handle people who are emotional social beings. Now, with the circumstances, with the change in the environment, with the change in the external environment, the the role of the manager also changes. Now, is it enough to get a degree and get employed in an organization and then just carry on working on a day-to-day basis? No. Nowadays, there is a requirement for upgrading your competencies, that is upgrading your skills, which means a manager has to be a lifelong learner. You have to continuously upgrade yourself, you have to continuously enhance your skills, you have to continuously look towards improving your competencies. How you can do that? You can only do that by being a lifelong learner. You should be a delegator. That means we are looking towards decentralization. So you cannot just try to keep all the responsibilities, all the authorities to oneself, because then you cannot function. So you should be a good person with having the skills of delegating to the people who are working with you. You should be a future leader. That is, you yourself be a future leader. At the same time, you see that the people who are working with you, the people who are working under you, you try to teach them, you try to train them to be a lifelong learner so that they become competent and they become skilled, they become ideal future leaders. You should be an innovator, because if you are having the innovating skills, then only your team will also have the competencies for carrying out the innovations. You need to be proactive, because one thing is being reactive, the second thing is being proactive. So you should be a proactive attitude, so that if you see any kind of challenge coming, if you think that there is a threat coming, or if you perceive that it might come, it is not coming but it might come, because the environment is changing constantly. The social environment, the cultural environment, the economic environment, the financial surroundings, everything is changing. So we have to be proactive. We have to mold ourselves. We have to mold our organization. We have to change our organization accordingly. We have to constantly innovate. So what does that mean? You should have a proactive attitude. And as I said, you should be an innovator. Innovator means what? You trying to think something new. You have to be different from the others, then only you are able to succeed. So that means what? You have to have the out of box thinking and working. It's not that the same routine kind of work. No, you are performing the routine work. That is important. You are performing the structured way of doing things. But at the same time, you should also try to see that you adopt new way of doing things, because things are changing. You have to adopt the technology. You have to change yourself as per the changing circumstances. Now we go on to the block 2, that is the managerial process, part 1, in which today, as I discussed with you earlier, we're going to discuss unit 4 and unit 5. So let's see if we are able to do it today. But yes, it is in our agenda. We have to complete unit 4, that is planning, and unit 5, that is organizing. Now, unit 4, planning. What are the objectives of this particular unit? You should be able to, at the end of this unit, you should be able to know and understand the meaning of planning as a management function. As you know, there are mainly 5 functions of management: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So planning is the first one. So it is kind of, it lays the foundation for the people to carry on with the other functions of management. We should be able to understand the characteristics of planning. It is a process, so we should be able to understand what is the planning process and how the planning process takes place in an organization. We should be able to define the merits and understand the demerits of planning, and then also we should be able to spell out the types of planning in an organization. Now, as you know, we have discussed the levels of management, wherein we discussed the top level, middle level, and the lower level management. And you saw that each one of them is involved in planning, although planning at a different level. So the top level is doing strategic planning, the middle level is doing operational planning, and the lower level is doing day-to-day planning. So planning exists at all levels. How does it begin? It begins with setting up of organizational objectives. And then once we set the organizational objectives, or we set the departmental objectives, or we set the day-to-day objectives for us to carry on the work, then we try to determine the various course of action to achieve these objectives, and then we decide. So, according to Ervik, he has defined planning in a different way. Ervik says that it is a mental predisposition to do things in an orderly way. See, why do we need to do planning? Planning at home also, planning in the department, planning in an institution, planning in an educational organization, planning in a business organization. It is basically to avoid doing things in a haphazard way, in order to do the things in a orderly way, in a definite series of ways, activities. So Arvik says it is a mental predisposition to do things in an orderly way. to think before acting, and to act in the light of facts rather than guesses. So if you're doing work in a haphazard way, then we are basically looking towards guessing what to do. But that does not lead to success. We will not be able to achieve the organizational objectives in this manner. So what is required is basically to do the work in a definite sequence rather than guessing what to do next. So, how do we do the work in a definite sequence? Only when we have timely data, timely information with us. So, what is planning? I think by now you would have understood. Planning is a process of selecting the best alternative resources to achieve organizational goals following predefined standards. So, we try to set the business objective, then we try to find out the course of action, then out of this course of actions we try to select the best course of action. So for selecting the best course of action we also try to select the best resources, best alternative. We have the different kinds of resources, so we try to select the best alternative resource through decision making, and then we achieve the organizational goals following the predefined standards. Holmes and O'Donnell have also defined planning. Now, let's see what they have said. They said that it is basically deciding in advance what to do, how to do, who does it. So that means what? Planning bridges the gap between where we are to where we want to do, where we want to be. So it makes possible things to occur which would not have occurred otherwise. Now, what are the features of planning? The features of planning, as you see here, it focuses basically on achievement of objectives. As I said, we look towards organize always, whether we're working on a day-to-day basis, whether we're working at the operational level, whether we're working at the organizational level, our focus should always be on the achievement of objectives. It is also, planning is the primary function of management. Now management, when I say, I do not always mean the top management. It is the function of all the levels of management. So when I say it is the function of all levels of management, that means it is pervasive. It exists at all the levels. It is a continuous process. Planning never ends. It's not that we develop a plan today and then we're done with it. No. With every day new challenges emerge, and with these challenges we have to try to identify these challenges in advance and accordingly you know modify our plans or develop new plans. So developing new plans means what? One of the features is futuristic, forward looking function. Then, as I said, once we develop a new plan, we have the course of action, different courses of action. Then we have to, depending on the resources that we have to make the strategic decisions. So when we are making strategic decision, there is rationality involved, there's conceptual thinking involved. So don't you think it is a mental exercise? It is a thinking process. Now, nature of planning process, it is a cognitive process. As I said, it is planning. Planning means we're looking towards the future. So we also kind of, it is a planning versus the forecast. It is accomplishment of group objectives. It is just not objective of one person. When we are talking, it is when we're talking of accomplishing the organizational objectives, which means group of people, group of human resources. Then it is choice between various alternatives. We have to have alternatives. It is, as I said, it exists everywhere at all levels. It has to be flexible, it cannot be rigid. We have to look towards not static organization, because being a static organization, we cannot exist. We will perish. So it is flexibility. There has to be inborn flexibility in the system. And then it is an integral process, it is an integrated process, because we are trying to bring all the different resources together towards organizational objectives. Now, steps So I think we'll just quickly go through this because we already discussed it. It is setting up of an organizational objective, developing the planning premises. Based on these planning premises and based on the organizational objectives, then we try to identify various courses of actions. Then we evaluate these courses, alternative courses of actions, evaluate it on the basis of the resources that we have, and evaluate it on the basis of what resources would be required in order to um, you know achieve these actions. So what resources we have, what resources we can allocate, based on that we evaluate the alternative courses of actions, and then we select the best alternative, we implement it. But then our work does not end there. Once we implement it, then we also try to see whether the plan that we have implemented, it is moving towards the right direction or not. That is it moving towards achievement of the organizational objectives? That what does that mean? It means monitoring, it means assessment, it means auditing, it means follow up. What is importance? I think now you would have understood that planning plays a very, very important role in management, because it ensures, selection of, we said, alternatives, trying to assess different alternatives. So alternatives would mean we try to ensure selection of the optimum goals. We manage complexities. So because we are managing complexities, we are managing environmental changes, we are managing different kinds of resources. So that's why planning is very important. Then planning, as I said, it is an integrated process. So it is bringing unity of action, it is bringing all the resources together to the achievement of the goals. And as you saw, the last step, not one of the last step, but the last step of the process of planning was control, monitoring. So it supports control and coordination between the people, between the different departments. It facilitates decision making, because that's what we're doing in planning. Now, what are the benefits or advantages of planning? It gives organization a sense of direction. We are actually moving towards the organizational goals. So we are not moving in a haphazard manner. We are moving towards the organizational goal. Thus, it gives a direction to the organization. It gives a direction to the people. They know which way they have to move. It focuses on the objectives and results, because it is result oriented, it is objective oriented. So that is one of the, without planning, we will not be able to achieve the objectives. See, as even for studies, we have to plan our studies. We have to see that, okay, these, suppose we have 10 chapters and we have 10 days, or let's say we have 5 days. So since the time is one of the resource, so what we do, we have to divide these 10 chapters within these 5 days. So that is our, we set the objective in front of us. So it is objective oriented. Then it is established basis for teamwork, because we know it's an integrated process. Not one person cannot be responsible for achievement of the goals, organizational goals. It is a combined effort. Then we provide guidelines for decision making, and it serves as a prerequisite for employing all the other management functions. It's an integrated process, so it integrates all the management functions towards what? It integrates all the management function towards the organizational goals. Types of planning. There are three types of planning. Strategic planning, that is strategic planning, as you all would know, it is being done by the top level management. Tactical planning, and then we have the operational planning. Tactical planning is done on the that is the organizational plans, that is the departmental plans. This is done by the middle level management. And then the operational plans, that is operational planning, which is done by on a day-to-day basis at the lower level management. Then we go to a very important topic of this unit, that is management by objectives. As you would all might be knowing, might have heard, management by objectives, in short, it is known as the MBO. This term was coined by Peter Drucker in 1954. Now, what is management by objectives? What is MBO? It is a management technique, in which, as the name shows, management by objectives. That means the senior or the superior or the manager, along with the subordinate, they try to jointly uh, formulate, they try to jointly develop the objectives which they are supposed to achieve. So it is, that means it's not the manager alone who designs the objective, who formulates the objectives and then gives the directions to the subordinates to achieve these objectives. No, it is a combined process, it is a joint process wherein the managers and the subordinates, they uh, jointly formulate the objectives so that they are able to achieve it together. So there is a kind of sense of belongingness. It integrates, it is a converging activity. So the process of setting objectives in the organization to give a sense of direction to the employees. If we leave it to the employees to do the work without telling them their objectives. We have the organizational objectives, but then those organizational objectives have to be further percolated down to the employees. That only can be done when the manager and the subordinates, that is the superior and the subordinate, they sit together, they discuss these plans, they try to then on the basis of this discussion they try to develop their own objectives. So when they jointly do it, it becomes a participative process, and because it is a participative process, so then the employees, they also assume the responsibilities. Thus, I think you would understand that since they know what they are required to do, so they are also very clear about the roles that they are required to perform. Now, what are the steps in MBO? I think you would have already understood. It is basically define. First of all, it begins with defining the organizational objectives and goals. Then, as we percolate down, it means defining the objectives of the employees based on the organizational objectives. So don't you think it is a kind of synchronizing effort? And then regularly monitor the performance and the progress. That is, we have this standard set, then we have the actual standards, then we try to find out the deviations, and then we go for the corrective measures. So we do a regular monitoring of the employee performance, then we provide them the feedback, and based on the feedback, then the employee takes a corrective measures, corrective course of action, and then we do the performance appraisal by the manager of the employee to see whether the objectives which have been defined for the employees, whether they have been able to achieve those objectives or not. What is the need for management of objectives? I think you would have understood by now that management by objective is a very, very important process, a very important concept in the organization, because it provides a sense of direction to the employees. The employees, they know what they are basically required to do. It clearly defines their duties. They are able to understand their duties. They are also able to know the key result areas. So KRS, which means key result areas, are designed for each employees, and according to their skills, according to their qualification, they are able to perform and achieve those key result areas. It also leads to satisfied employees. Why a satisfied employee? Well, the employee is satisfied because he has been given the work based on his interest, his specialization, his qualification, and he is part of the whole process. He is part of designing the objectives. So, since he is part of designing the objectives, he feels a sense of belongingness. He feels he is participating in the organizational goals. He is participating in the organizational growth, which is in turn contributing towards his own growth. This also leads to effective communication because all the employees are jointly taking the decisions. They are jointly designing their goals. So it also leads to effective communication. No employee can say that I didn't know about this particular decision. Now the fifth unit, that is organizing. Now at the end of this unit, what objectives will be achieved? What are the objectives of this particular unit? That is the fifth unit of this course. The objectives are concept of organizing. That is, we try to understand the concept of organizing. What is organizing? Then we keep on saying we're doing work. Now, what does this work mean? So, in the context of an organization, in the organizational context, we will try to understand the word work. Then we will try to also understand the different approaches to organizing and analyzing work in the organizational context. Then we try to also uh, see how the various methods can be improved, how we can measure the work process. Because let's say one employee is doing a particular work for years together. Now, with the changing environment, with the changing technologies, we also have to see whether this particular work that he has been, let's say, doing in 2 hours, by improving this whole process, how we can reduce the time and also increase the efficiency. So we will try to understand how to measure the work process. We will also be able to understand the time and motion study. By the end of this unit, we will know what is time study, what is motion study. Then you must have also, heard of this term ergonomics. Like, furniture, they say it is ergonomically designed furnitures, ergonomically designed office chairs. So what is basically ergonomics? And then very important thing which I have been telling right from the beginning today, changing technology. So what is the effect of uh, changing information technology on work design, effect or impact of IT on work design? Because we can't remain aloof. We have to change ourselves. We have to adopt the latest methods of information technology. Even if we don't try to adopt it, the change will force us to adopt the technology, and accordingly we have to see how this technology is affecting the work process, the work design, and how by adopting this technology, how the work design can be improved so that we are able to do the work in a more effective and efficient manner. Now, what is organizing? Organizing Organizing refers to, like we say, organization structure. Organizing refers to formal grouping of people and activities to facilitate achievement of organizational objectives. Now, formal grouping, as you must have seen, every organization has organization structure. So, what is the objective of having an organization structure? Can we work without an organizational structure? No. So, what is the objective? What is this process? The process is basically organizing. We have people, different kinds of people in the organization, people, employees with different qualifications, with different skill sets, with different competencies. So not one person can do all the work, or let's say one employee cannot do all the different kinds of work. So we need to organize these people. So we are not doing it informally. It is based on the organizational strategies. It is based on the organizational objectives that we try to group these people. That's why we say organizing is a formal grouping. Now, within the formal organization, we have the informal organization. But for the informal organization to exist, we should also have the formal organization. So it is the organizing is the formal grouping of people and activities. And why we are organizing it? We are organizing it for achievement of the organizational objectives. Now, as I said, every organization has a structure. So what does the structure mean? structure means it is a specific manner in which the people are grouped. So let's see how the people are grouped. The basis for the grouping of the people is the organization structure. We have many kinds of organization structure. We have the functional organizational structure, geographical, product, matrix, and then organizational structure on the basis of customers. Now, what is functional? Functional organizational structure would be, you must have seen, there would be an organization wherein the people have been grouped, the departments have been grouped on the basis of different functions. So, functional organizational structure would be, we have the, let's say, the president, and then we have the vice president marketing, we have vice president HR, we have marketing, vice president operations, we have vice president R&D, that is research and development. So as you see, we have different functions. We have vice president finance. So based on these different functions, the organization structure has been designed. Then we have geographical. You must have heard, sometimes you ask, what is this gentleman doing? So people might say that, oh, he is country head Asia, or he is country head India, or let's say he is heading Europe operations. So what does this mean? The organization has been designed, has been structured on the basis of geographical areas. So you might be having, let's say, if we don't take the international context, we can also take the national context. We can have, like, you have regional heads. So the organization could be, head north, head east, head west, head central, head south in India. So what does that mean? The person who is heading the North India would be responsible for operations of the entire northern part of India. So that is the geographic organization structure. And then we have also organization structure on the basis of product. Suppose the organization is such which is responsible for manufacturing different kinds of products. So based on that also, let's say we have the an automobile company. Now, automobile company, let's say maybe it is manufacturing light commercial vehicles, it is manufacturing two-wheelers, and it is also manufacturing heavy commercial vehicles, let's say trucks. So, accordingly, we have three kinds of products. We have heavy commercial vehicles, then we have light commercial vehicles, private vehicles, and then we have the two-wheelers. So accordingly, the organization structure would be, let's say, we have the president, or we have the chairman of the organization, and then we might be having, let's say, the head, heavy automobile industries. Then we might be having the head light commercial vehicles, and then we might be having the head two-wheelers. So that is the product-based organization structure. And then we might also have, nowadays we mostly have matrix organization, which is a combination of functional and product organization. And then we have based on the types of customers. So you might be having, let's say, regional manager, rural. Let's say we have an insurance company, or we have a bank. So bank would be having, let's say, chief manager, rural operations, and then we might be having chief manager, urban operations in a district. So rural operations means what? It is catering to the needs of the rural customers. And then let's say urban operations, which means it is catering to the needs of the urban population. So based on the kind of operations, based on the kind of organizational objectives, the structure of the organization is designed. Now, there are certain terms, which I would like to discuss with you today. Here, it is very important, which helps us in understanding organizing and organization structure. For example, centralization. As you would see, and as you would understand, centralization. What does that mean? As the word says, centralization. Like, we say that he believes in centralized decision making. So what does that mean? It means authority for taking decision is vested on one person. So head of the organization or head of the department is at one person, at one place. Then we have decentralization, just the opposite. When we are talking of participative decision making, when we are talking of democratic decision making, we are talking of decentralization. Decentralization, as you would understand, is, as I said, it is opposite of centralization, which means the authority for making decision is vested in more than one person. So this is something like distributed decision making. So it is not vested at one place. It people at different levels are have the authority and are responsible for making the decision. So it is participated. So it increases the sense of belongingness of the employees, and it also enhances the trust and trust of the employees. It enhances the faith towards the organization of the employees. Next important term is span of control. We say narrow span of control, and then we say a very wide span of control. So, what is span of control or span of management? It is basically how many people, how many employees, how many subordinates are reporting to the manager or the leader. Let's say we have a team leader. Now, the team leader might be having five persons or five divisions reporting to him. So that is narrow. Let's say we have a person who's got only two people reporting to him. So that means the person has a very narrow span of control. Whereas wide span of control is wherein the person, the leader, the manager has got number of people reporting to him. So that is a wide span of control. Now, approaches to organizing and analyzing work. Now, as you saw last time, we had discussed, there are different approaches to management. Similarly, there are different approaches to organizing and analyzing work, which is basically an extension of what we had studied earlier. We begin with the ancient approach. What is so? It's just not that organizing exists only today. It is not a new concept. It existed even in the old times. We see the Chinese who was there in 372 and 289 BC. He explained the concept of division of labor and its advantages. So you see how old is the concept of organizing. And also it tells us that how old is the concept of management. It's not a new concept at all. Then the Greeks also, they practiced organizing, and they believed in uniform work methods. So the working styles and work methods should be uniform. And they also used something like work songs to achieve smooth, less exhausting tempo and improve productivity. Similarly, Plato, he also recognized division of labor, and he said a man whose work is confined to such limited task must necessarily excel at it. That means what? He is talking of specialization. He spoke of specialization, division of labor. That means what? The employee, depending on the skills, depending on the qualification, depending on their competencies, the division of work has to be done, and accordingly, the person has to excel in the work that he is performing. Then we have the industrial approach during the industrial revolution. That is, industrial revolution, as we all know, it was initiated. It had taken up momentum. It had gained momentum in the 17th century, and how it was basically due to the technical advances in textile industry with the invention of Hargreaves' spinning jenny, Arkwright's water frame, and Compton's wheel. So, what led to this kind of approach? the technological advancements, developments, expanding trade and market. So, people started having trade and commerce not only within the city, within the village, but it was also within the country. It was with people started having trade with different regions, different countries. That led to a kind of change in the organization structure of the company. This led to industrial revolution, and as you all know, father of economics Adam Smith, he gave three merits of division of work. That is development of skill. By division of work, we are, as I said, division of work means employees with specific skill sets are assigned the work, are given the work, are delegated to do perform a particular work. So it leads to development of skill. It leads to saving of time, because a person is skilled to do that particular work. He is trained. He does not need to be trained again, except when new technologies or better methods of work are developed. Then again we have to train the employee so as to keep him at par with the changing environment. And then there's also possibility of using specialized tools. Third approach, scientific management approach, as you all know, has been given by Taylor, Frederick Winslow Taylor. Now, I'll not go into detail in this because we had discussed scientific management approach in very much detail in the first session, counseling session. So I would just like to quickly go through. As you all know, the rule of thumb was replaced with development of science of work. And when we are talking of scientific approach towards work means scientifically selecting the people, scientifically training the people, and scientifically trying to develop the workers so that they are able to do the work in a systematic, in a scientific, in a proper proper organized way, instead of doing in a haphazard way. That is, instead of doing it according to rule of thumb. And then scientific management approach of organizing is also set to advocate cooperation between the workers and management. And when there is cooperation of workers and management, when there is scientifically selecting people, that means there is division of work between the workers and the management. The next approach looks towards, we discussed the Fordism. Now, Fordism, as you all know, comes from the famous industrialist, the Henry Ford, and that was known in the 20th century, early 20th century, when Henry Ford established the concept of relative surplus value. What does that mean? That means workers were paid more than 4 to 5 times the prevailing rate, and still the company was in profit. So, how did that mean? What that meant, that you organize the work, you organize the people according to their skills in such a way, and then you pay them more so that they work with more efficiency, more effectiveness, thus increasing the productivity of the plant of the by use of assembly line and scientific management techniques. Human relations approach, again, this we have already discussed it in the previous session, but I'll quickly go through it. As you all know, human relations approach looks towards um, not work oriented organization, not focusing on the work, not focusing on not only the production of the organization, but also focusing on the humane aspects of the organization. And most important study in this case is the Hawthorne study, which we have again discussed in the previous session, which was given by Elton Mayo. And as you all know, quickly we go through the Hawthorne studies. Hawthorne studies, as you all know, focused on not only the social aspects of production, not only the physical aspects of production, it also focused on the socio-cultural aspects that affects the production level, that affects the efficiency of the employees. So it is also uh, the behavior, the attitude of the workers which gets affected by non-financial rewards also. So it is non-financial motivation, the intrinsic motivation that affects the workers, that affects the workers' behavior, that leads to um, higher productivity. Now we go to something like work improvement and work measurement. Now, work improvement, as we all know, work improvement, or it's also known as the method study or the method engineering. Well, students, we will try to discuss this in the next session, and we wind up today's session. Today, we discussed the role of managers, we discussed planning, and we have discussed a part of organizing. Thank you so much. Namaskar.